grab your coat and get your hat. Leave your worry on the doorstep. Just direct your feet to the sunny side of the street. Can't you hear a pitter-pat? And that happy tune is your step. Life can be so sweet on the sunny, sunny, sunny side of the street. Hi, welcome to another On the Sunny Side of the Street. I'm your host, Todd Gross, a clinical psychologist and director of Adams Street Associates in Newton. And our show, On the Sunny Side of the Street, is a show where we try to look at the other side of reality, not just all the negative news that you hear on TV, but the stories of people helping each other, people overcoming odds, people in doing very inspirational kinds of things that make a difference. And today's program is a special program in many ways. It's special because we're doing an hour program. It's special because we have some really wonderful guests who are very special themselves. And the story that we're going to be talking about with them comes from one of the darkest periods in our history, World War II. And it's about children who survived the Holocaust in Hungary, who were hidden children. And as you will learn, the title of our show, Remember Us, is also the title of a book that the survivors, many of them, collaborated on and wrote about their experiences in Hungary. And we'll be talking about many themes in terms of being displaced, being frightened, being cold, being hungry, and how people survived. And we're going to be hearing both their stories, but also we're going to be hearing about, on the positive side, what they have done with their lives, how they've continued on, also how kindness was shown to them in particular situations too. So here to help us tell the story, we have first on my left our editor, Evie Blakey. Hi, Evie.
Hello.
Thank you for coming. Next to Evie, we have Susan Bender. Thank you, Susan.
Hello.
Nice to have you here. And Marika Barnett, who's also been here working at our station at times too. Nice to have you, Marika. And last, Tommy Rebe. And nice to have you here too, Tommy.
Pleasure.
Well, I'm very glad that we're all here together. I should mention that the stories that are in this book, of which these people are representative, are truly amazing. We also have with us today, because the theme of this show will be the importance of remembering and always telling these stories and making sure that people hear the lessons in these stories and carry them forward, even in terms of things that are going on in the world today. It's important to also know that this message is carried on. And so we have with us my own daughter, Amanda Gross, which is always a pleasure to have with us. And Amanda will be talking a little bit later in the show about what she did within her college situation on a Holocaust Remembrance Week to kind of illustrate the point that the message is going to continue on. So, by way of starting, I thought might be helpful for people to hear, just to set the stage, a little bit of what your life was like as a very young child in Hungary before the war started. And I might start here and ask each of you to say a little so the viewers can get a sense.
Well, my life actually didn't start in Hungary.
Yes, okay.
Because my parents were immigrants to France.
Mm-hmm.
So even though they were Hungarian, they lived in France, they married in France, I was born there. And I got to Hungary in 1941 because the Germans invaded France at that time. And both my parents were deported from France, and I was taken to Hungary to be with my mother's family, because at that time in 1941 Hungary still looked safe.
Okay.
And I joined my mother's family, and I became part of that family. They were wonderful to me. They adopted me. They thought that my mother and father would never come back. And I was a happy little kid there.
All right.
I forgot my parents.
Okay.
You know?
So you moved and adjusted to a totally different life, but so far in the story, a safe and protected life.
Absolutely.
All right. Can you add a little of a piece, Susan, for you, what life was like before the war too?
I was born in Budapest, and before the war, I had a typical middle-class existence. I took ballet lessons. My maternal grandmother lived with us. We went on vacations. In fact, my father had a successful textile business, and he built us a beautiful little house which was named after me, Jovila, on Lake Balaton, which was kind of considered the playground of Europe at the time. And I think the most significant part of my life was taking ballet lessons, which I started at a very young age.
Yes.
A little bit over 3. And that's also where I encountered the first signs of discrimination. When you're that little, you really don't understand what being a Jew means.
Can you say a little on that while we're on that?
Yeah, very briefly. When the Jewish laws started being introduced in Hungary.
We're talking about the late 30s now?
Yes.
Okay.
Late 30s, 39. It meant that every day there was a new indignity. Jews could no longer go to school, so I actually didn't start school until after the war began. Jews could no longer practice their profession or their business, and they had their telephones taken away. One of my early memories is having people come into our house and removing our telephone. And they could not appear in public. And the reason that had such a significant impact on me, because I encountered my first heroes in life, and I was fortunate enough to have many. In my ballet class, we were practicing for the annual performance, and we were to be little dolls who come to life while the match girl dreams and freezes to death. And to try to make it very short, we had our measurements taken, and the seamstress came with our dresses. And when the dresses were brought, I was the only one who didn't get a dress. And I couldn't understand why, and I did what children do when they're hurt. I cried.
Sure.
And I didn't want to go back to class. I didn't understand that being a Jew meant that you couldn't appear in public. And the ballet master, Mr. Nadashi, whom I still adore, he's no longer alive, but he's my first hero, liked me very much. And I heard my aunt and my mother whisper when I was in bed in the evening that Mr. Nadashi explained that Jews cannot appear in public, and therefore I cannot be in the performance. And I just cried, and I didn't want to go back to ballet school. And I didn't go back. And then I heard my aunt and my mother whisper outside of the room again one day and said, Mr. Nadashi pronounced that if one child cannot be in the performance, there will be no performance. And I mean, this was more than 60 years ago. Those words are still alive in my ears as music, as the most beautiful music. And they have had a profound impact on the kind of person I've become.
That is unbelievable and very amazing story, and the kindness that was shown. And you and I were talking about this before. It reminded me when you said this of the Danish king who wore the armband and say, well, we're all Jewish. You can't separate us. And also your point about how as a child you can't understand, you have no way to understand that kind of segregation, that kind of discrimination, what that means other than they don't want me. A horrible feeling. Thank you for that. We're going to come back for more stories from all of you. Let me move to Marika. Can you give me a little sense of what things were like?
I also lived in a relatively protected, certainly financially protected life, and lived in a beautiful place right next to the parliament, overlooking the Danube and the Buddha Hills. However, happy it was not. My parents didn't have a good marriage, and they separated on a Christmas Eve. Actually, we ran out of the apartment, and so it's not one of my favorite holidays ever since.
No.
And in any case, we were not celebrating it, but still, that's the evening. They were getting a divorce, and in the last minute of the divorce, before the last paper, my mother was all packed to go back to her village, which was in northeast Hungary, where her family lived. And she grew up there in northeast Hungary. And they were all packed up to go back there. And we were ready to go when I took hands, aged 9. I took things in hands and ran back and forth and made peace between my parents. I used to spend the summer in this village, and it was boring during the summer. I think what really frightened me is to spend there the winters. However, I did stop the divorce, and my parents stayed not happy, but they stayed together until the rest of their life. With that, I certainly saved nobody survived from my family. One cousin came back, but no, from a large family, nobody survived there. Clearly, I saved my mother's life and my life with that step.
Amazing, amazing.
So happy it was not, but it was a relatively protected life I had.
Thank you for that too, Marika. And Tommy, last, can you give us a little sense of what life was like for you in those pre-war times?
Oh, it was very easy and simple and great. I was the only son, so I was groomed to take over the family business, which meant studying in Switzerland and taking care of import-exports in the Balkans. My grandfather made sure that it works.
Yes.
He changed my birth certificate. Actually, I saw my original birth certificate a couple of years ago in my mother's papers after she died. So I became a Protestant. I went to the Protestant elementary school in Hungary. It was so good that because I went there, they was willing to accept some of the best schools, my son, here in the United States. So I had a pretty good life over there.
Okay.
I had no complaint. We spent the summer half in the mountains, half in the Balaton. Nice life.
All right, so for our audience so far, what we have is people who had existence where they were relatively safe, protected, connected to family, trying to just live the life of a child. And from the survivors, few things they have taught me, just to set the stage for the second part. One was that we have Nazi Germany invading Hungary not until 1944. So we have a fascist party, the Arrow Cross, within Hungary, but we don't have the horrendous murdering that was going on all over Europe to the extent in Hungary until 44. But the second thing that I was taught by our guests is that if you lived in the countryside, once that started, you didn't have any chance. Those were who they went for first. So we're talking mostly about people who lived in Budapest that had some chance to survive by hiding. So as we move now to the second part, which is to ask each of the people to tell whatever part they want, I want to say a few things to the audience in preparation. The first is that while these stories have elements that have tremendous cruelty, as Susan talked about some of the Jewish laws, which themselves were cruel and discriminatory and hurtful, there were also in their stories, if they choose to tell them, some amazing people like your dance teacher that really left an impression, even in dark times, that there still can be kindness in people's hearts. So as you listen, I hope you'll hear both sides. And because these stories are difficult, people will tell what they're comfortable with. And for people who are remembering these kinds of stories, safety is always important because of how unsafe these circumstances were. So keep that in mind as you listen and as people tell whatever they choose to from their stories. And then we'll come back and we'll look at how these came together for a book as well. But let me again start with you, if that's okay, Evie.
Sure. Say
the parts that you'd be interested in people to hear, some things that really struck you in your experience during the war.
Well, I was very young, and I really was not aware. First of all, I really didn't know that I was a Jew.
Yes,
You know, we had my parents, my family, wasn't my parents, my family didn't advertise it. They had a Christmas tree at Christmas, and religion was not part of our lives, but certainly I didn't know what a Jew was. But then certain things started happening. Our house, our building was designated as a Jewish house, which meant that Jews moved in. We were supposed to have a family in every room, so that we had, I think, a 4-room apartment. 4 families had to move in with us. So we were pretty crowded. And then bombs fell, you know, which frightened us, obviously, and I wrote a story about that. I do want to mention something about the stories in the book, that these are not horror stories such as we read about the Holocaust. These are stories that children remember. When you mention the word Holocaust, what comes to a child's mind? And so, you know, certain things started happening. We could only go out at certain times of the day. We couldn't go to school, as Susan mentioned. Couldn't appear in public. We had to wear yellow stars. And there was an aura of fear, which we got by osmosis from the adults. But I never knew that it was because I was a Jew. I didn't. Others did.
Yes.
But for me, that was never a question. I didn't know what it was. I just knew that there was fear. And eventually we went, and it was in hiding. So that was my experience.
And I want to mention that you also, we'll come back to it, that you were the contributing editor to the book.
Yes.
So you collected the stories, and there are a couple stories in there that I read of yours that were wonderful. One about your cousin Peter, was it?
Yes.
And that had to do with the air raids, and also one about, was it artichokes?
Yes.
Yes. And so I recommend that for people who are reading the book. They were wonderful stories.
Thank you.
And can you give me a little sense, Susan, from your experience, what kind of things happened in the war in your situation?
Well, I think unlike Evie, first of all, I was very conscious of being a Jew. It took a while before I realized what a terrible thing it was to be a Jew. For example, walking on the street, I was called a vermin. And I didn't have the vocabulary. I was 4 or 5 years old, so I ran home and
what's a vermin?
What's a vermin? What's a vermin? And I already forgot what it is in Hungarian, fortunately.
Yes.
But my father had come from an Orthodox family, so we had practiced religion. And our house was also designated as a Jewish house, which in many ways was very fortunate because it meant you didn't have to move into the ghetto.
That's true.
So at least you could stay in your apartment, but your apartment filled up, as Evie had said. People moved in because everybody wanted to avoid going to the ghetto if there was a chance.
How did they decide, by the way, which houses would be Jewish houses or not? I'm just curious.
50% of, if it was more than 50% of the tenants Jewish, that's how it was
I see.
decided.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Oh, and there was a big Jewish star was painted on your front door to identify these houses.
Yeah, because the intention wasn't benign. The reason they designated it because it would be easy to go and pick up the Jews for deportation.
Yes.
They wouldn't have to go apartment by apartment. They would know that this house
Contained Jews.
I hear you.
contained Jews.
Yeah. Is there more that you want to say too in terms of the story for you?
Well, it is. I mean, what had become, and I think that apart from telling my story, there are so many people. There were so many compassionate people that I remember. And there was already so much written about the horrors of the Holocaust.
Right.
And I've always considered, and I still consider myself a very fortunate person. I had a brother who was 2 years older than I was, and my brother and I, after the war ended, were the only two children we knew who survived with both parents. Everybody else had lost at least one
He had
child.
diabetes too?
He had juvenile diabetes.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And my mother began to hoard insulin as soon as the war started. And she had it tied around her wrist in a red leather bag, which I still remember. So she's also my heroine, because she was planning, and she just wasn't going to let things happen to her children.
Very strong person, and really was clearly a hero. You also have one story, if you don't mind, that I would love the viewers to hear in the book about the ice cream man. And especially for the people who watch the show regularly, we always talk about how even in difficult times there are some people that stand out. You've already given some very good examples. I loved the story. If you don't mind, if you could tell the viewers, I'd like to share it with them.
Not at all, because although this happened many years ago, I can still savor the moment and the impact that it had on me. While we were living in our very crowded apartment with all the other Jewish families that had moved in, my mother was a firm believer in fresh air, and she insisted that we go out for a walk. And like any little child, I was 6 already, because I had to wear a yellow star, and the stars had to be stitched on a particular way. They had to be stitched on very tightly.
I remember
so
reading
they
that,
couldn't. You couldn't. If a finger could be stuck into between the stitches, that was grounds for being shot on the spot.
Unbelievable, right.
So we went out for a walk, and children want to have a purpose. Fresh air is not enough. So certainly not. It's also true for my children and now my grandchildren. They want to go somewhere. So I wanted to go to the Italian ice cream store. And we walked there, and then I wanted to go in. What self-respecting child doesn't want to get an ice cream when they get there? And my mother explained to me that we couldn't, because it was the afternoon and Jews were only allowed 1 hour a day in the morning to shop, when the lines were endless, because that's the only time everybody had. And my mother explained to me that we couldn't go into the store because we were Jews, and she didn't have any money on her, because she knew we couldn't buy anything. So I began to howl. It was an enormous assault to take me to the ice cream store and not let me go in.
Yes.
And the last thing you wanted to do was to draw any attention.
Yes.
You just wanted to be invisible. In fact,
Right.
I think that's a theme in our lives as hidden children, is the desire and the skill in being invisible.
How to be silent,
How
not
to be
seen.
silent and not seen.
Yes.
So my mother didn't want to attract any attention. She yanked me into a building and begged me to stop crying, but I wouldn't. And so she took my star off and let me go alone across the street to the Italian ice cream man. And she had a penny in her pocket, which most of us do lose, And I walked into the ice cream store, and the Italian man was extremely nice. And he smiled and welcomed me. And for my penny, he gave me 3 scoops. And even though I wasn't a genius, sure, I knew that you didn't get 3 scoops per penny, even if you were not a Jew.
Yes.
So this was I went from being in utter despair and inconsolable to feeling like I was on cloud 9.
Yes.
And I still remember when they asked me at many conferences, they ask you to go back to a very relaxing, happy moment in your life. I can not only see those 3 scoops, I can paint them.
That is beautiful. Thank you, Susan. How about for you, Marika? What would you like us to hear that was important for you during those war years?
Well, it was the moment, as I told you, it wasn't an undisturbed childhood by then, but however, as of March 19, it really turned upside down. and completely, confusing. Partly because we were separated in the Northeast from the family and could not communicate with them, and they were the first one, by the way, who were taken to Auschwitz, and most of them immediately upon arrival, were directed by Dr. Mengele to the gas chamber. However, in our place, we became a Yellow Star house. We just made it a Yellow Star house. Yes, this beautiful building. It became we were relieved. It became a Yellow Star house. One night, a rich family disappeared from the first floor, and the German general moved in with his staff, and he said, well, he's very sorry, but we can't expect him to live in a Yellow Star house. So despite that, we were legitimately a Yellow Star house, goodbye, and we should leave it within a week. Much sooner than if we were not originally a Yellow Star house. So we had to leave. And interesting you mention an Italian, because it's a too long story for now, but it's a wonderful Italian man that saved us, who changed apartments with us. And it's a very funny story, and someday we'll talk about it. But he was Italian. Achilles de Carli is his name. I never forget it to this day. And in inhuman times, he behaved wonderfully with us, not just by changing the apartment, but the way he treated us, with the respect and kindness. But it is a very funny story. So, any case, we moved into a crowded apartment by that time. Ounce moved in with us, and then again, family secrets came out. I went into hiding to Gentiles who turned out to be related to the family, which were secrets never would have come out. The man who hid me was the illegitimate son of my father. One reason, because Jews were not allowed to marry Gentiles, so at one time he was in love with a beautiful Gentile girl, could not marry her, they had a son, and so on. So it was not, but I would have never found these things out. Certainly not as a 10-year-old, and I lived with them. However, they thought it was dangerous. They brought me back, and they thought I was in danger. I came back to theirs, and then eventually I went to a convent, lived in a convent for 2 months. They kind of forcibly, certainly put pressure on me mentally to get converted, and I got converted to Catholicism. And then my father, who was a very brave man and was running around on the streets with fake armbands even after curfew hour, and he saw children being led by the Hungarian Nazis. He had the chutzpah to walk over to them and said, "Where are you taking them?" "Oh, we're taking them to the collection center." "Where do you bring them from?" "The convent." Some convent, not ours, but most convents were hiding children. That's all he needed. He ran up.
He knew you weren't safe there.
That's right. Grabbed me, took me home, and that's eventually. So I again lived at home, and eventually we found safe haven. What I describe in this book is that the German SS set up a building where more than 1,000 Jews were hidden. This is Kurt Becker. A lot of books now are published about Kurt Becker, this SS major who got rich, filthy rich, on the money he took. This was for money. This was not out of kindness. This was strictly a business transaction.
Yes. And we'll save you if you pay us.
And we became very poor after the war. Supposedly, it was $20,000 per family. $20,000.
Yes.
That was a lot of money those days.
Oh yes.
And I found this out from official records. I don't know whether my father paid less, because luckily he had his office in that building, or did he pay more? Because we also brought my aunts with us also. He was more of a very fine man who never would talk about money. And
he just wanted to save his family.
He wanted to save his family.
Amazing.
And we eventually, that's where we survived the war. in this safe haven.
Thank you for that story very much. And Tommy, what would you like us to know for you? I'd like to hear your story.
I started hiding in 1940.
Really?
Two, when my grandfather changed all my papers officially, changed it, and I became a Protestant and went to one of the best Protestant schools internationally, okay, in
Yes.
Budapest. I was a big Protestant. And that's how I started life. And obviously I knew that I was Jewish
Yes.
because, my family was Jewish. My grandfather went to the temple and I went with him, but we lived a very quiet life. So my hiding started in 42. A little bit more hiding later on didn't make any difference. We survived in the hospital, one of these places where they bought basically off the Germans and the Hungarians and everybody else, and as long as my mother's Jew lasted, we were in good shape. Thank God. Okay, before it went all to the Germans or to the holocaust, the Russians came. So that's how I survived.
Incredible. And I understand that one of the ways you were saved was by papers. That somebody claimed your family were criminals and got you out of a dangerous situation and rescued you.
I was
Is that
ready
right?
to. That's right. I was ready to go to Auschwitz when my grandfather came from the southern Hungary, and he had a good friend from the same village who was with the police. He was a policeman and pretty high ranking at that time. And when he heard that they were taking us out, he get into the car, get an arrest warrant for us, arresting for murder. He wanted to arrest my grandmother as a murderer, my mother as an accomplice, and of course I would come with them. Showed to the Germans and the Hungarians and say they want to let me. I said, I don't care. This is Hungary. We are the police. These are murderers. So they said, okay,
Wow.
take them.
It's
And that's how I
amazing.
ended back in the ghetto.
Incredible. Incredible.
But, they're being Jewish, especially where I was in the ghetto, and watching firsthand the inner working because of my grandfather and the people coming into the ghetto. That was quite an experience. It was interesting.
I'll bet. I'll bet.
It was a surrealistic experience.
Really.
And you had to learn how to hide in plain sight. And I think that experience and that knowledge stick with most of us.
That's an interesting theme. Maybe.
Yes,
Go ahead, please.
Because later on, when the Russians came, you had the same problems.
Yeah.
Okay,
It
at
wasn't
least
over.
I had the same problem. By age 15, I was the enemy of the people. Okay? Then you come out to, I spent 5 years in Europe. You didn't want to show off. You wanted to be nice and quiet. You don't want to create problems. I came over here, okay? The only goal in my life was just let me live. I want to have a nice, quiet life.
Absolutely. Of course.
Don't want to get blood. And that's what makes, I think, our life so different. And as I look through some of the other child survivors, I see this team coming out with most of them.
Well, I have to say for our audience that you now heard both the lives of our guests before the war and what their stories are during the war too. But as Tommy just pointed out, it doesn't end there at all. There's for many immigration, there's for many dealing with the Russians, another group of people that also oppressed. So the kinds of things I wanted to ask you to comment on, and you've made some points along those lines already, is when you think about the fact you survived, what are some of the factors that you attribute your survival to? What are some of the things that really helped you survive? And then secondly, I want to develop with you what happened afterward in your life. What are the effects of this experience, which you're also alluding to? Anyone want to comment on that? Some of the things that were really important in terms of your survival?
Well, obviously the people who helped us. When we wrote the book, there is a part about the righteous. Those are the people who helped the Jews survive.
Yes.
They're called the righteous among nations. And there was some controversy. Somebody did not want that in the book because they felt that it was almost a palliative, like, you know, there was so few of them and we're making a big thing about it. And true, there were far too few. But they were there. And it's as much as part of history as those who were out to kill us. And if there had not been any, none of us here would have survived.
Right.
Because everyone would have been against us and they would have hunted us down. So I think the reason for our survival were those few. And I think we should honor them.
Well said. And from what I'm learning from each of you talking in your own stories is that people like that also give you hope in a larger sense too.
Yes, well that was it. I think knowing that there were people like that in the world who really risked their own lives for us, I think has made us much more willing to help others, I hope. I hope we could behave as well as they did, given the opportunity.
Sure.
As I said, I just hope we could.
Thank you, Evie. Anything anyone else wants to add to that? Yeah, Marika.
I was a little bit more bitter and cynical about some of the righteous, you know, because I, for a long time, including my half brothers, you know, everybody did everything for money. You know, I knew very few of without money saving, and that was at least my experience. But as I mentioned, my parents' behavior wasn't always exemplary and often was selfish, yet at this time, in this period, they were almost, I'm very grateful to my parents, whom I rebelled against at other times, and, you know, and so on. But at this point, they put away all selfishness, and especially my father, with the greatest braveness and heroism, worked on nothing else but how to save my life, you know. And actually, all of us, including me, were at our best behavior in that 10 months period of time, you know, all of us. And so I personally am very grateful, and more I think about it, more and more grateful to my parents and their sacrifice. I'm a little bit cynical about some of the other things.
I am very cynical, to be very honest with you.
It's good to hear a variety of views. Go ahead.
Okay. Why? Because when I start to scratch on the surface, I see the money, okay? I see how I was lucky. I was in the hospital, so I came through very well, thank you very much. I wasn't really hungry because my mother could buy everything for me, what was available. There wasn't too much available, except little tomato soups and little bread, that's all. You know, but she could buy it for me. And the question of money always came up. whatever we did, wherever we went, it was paid and well paid.
I see. Yeah, you
Can
wanted
I
to add.
absolutely, I'm sitting here.
I know, you're chomping. Go ahead.
I think only because I may be one of the lucky ones. We were saved by 2 German soldiers who received not a penny from us. But what had happened, because Hungary was the last country to be invaded, by the time they got to Hungary, they had seen so much blood that they really, the officer named Wuchte, who was running who was in charge of a uniform factory, which was repairing and sewing new, fresh uniforms for the German army. And my aunt was ordered to work there. She was mandated as a Jewish woman to work there. And she begged the officer if he would hide my brother and I, who were the only children in the family. And he said, what am I going to do with 2 children? They'll make noise. That you can hide in the cellar, but you have to shut them up.
Be quiet.
Because you have to be quiet.
Yes.
You have to be invisible. And so my aunt said, well, I'll bring my mother, my sister, they'll keep them quiet. And of course, everybody else who worked in the factory, including a deaf and dumb couple, when there was a possibility to survive, everybody wanted it.
Sure.
So actually, several families, including the deaf and dumb couple, moved down into the cellar, and that's where we hid. And the only person who was paid was the superintendent of this. This was a regular apartment building. The factory was on 1 floor. The superintendent of the building did get paid. The German soldiers, whose last names, unfortunately, we never found out, because they knew that if we were caught, not only would they be wiped out, but so would their families, because they were traitors in the eyes of the Nazis. So there was absolutely not, but that. And I think, in addition, I agree with Marika that I have what played a role in our survival were our parents. I mean, they were relentless in coming up with one plan after the other. And it was only when I was an adult that I realized that some of the plans had holes in it.
Sure.
For example, one of my mother's plans was that she would give us all my brother's insulin, and we would go into shock. And then when they came to deport us, they would think we were already dead.
Wow.
And she thought that a neighbor, Mr. Klein, who was too old to be in the army, would then come and wake us up with grape sugar, not realizing that he would have been deported also, so there wouldn't have been anybody. Sure. But all I knew was that there was a plan. She was a creative. And I think what none of us have had an opportunity to say, that one of the things that helped us survive is luck. And if I may, I would like to give an example. One of my mother's many plans and father's was to build us an annex in the country. They didn't realize, everybody thought that the rural areas were safer. It was absolutely the opposite.
The opposite,
because that was the easier place to pick up the Jews, because they stood out.
Yes.
So she spent most of our money on having an annex built to a farmhouse where we were going to hide. And the day we were to go into that annex, my brother cried. So my brother, whose head was shaved so he should look less Jewish.
Yes.
Actually, I thought he looked pathetic. He was 9 years old, and he refused to go. He was crying so loud that, again, because my mother didn't want to attract any attention, she didn't know what to do. She went next door to the old and wise Mr. Klein and said to him, I don't know what to do. I've spent my money on this house. This was the best bet we have. And you see, my brother refuses to come. And Mr. Klein wisely said, you know what? Children have a sixth sense. If he doesn't want to go so badly, respect his gut.
A good lesson.
We didn't go. An incredible lesson, because then that farmer sold the annex to somebody else, and the first day turned them in to the Germans, so they were deported.
Wow.
So the fact that
luck again, and
listening
also to your voice, also important. Yes.
I just want to make a point about the cynicism about the fact of the money.
Yes.
Yes, many took money, most did, but even though they were taking money, they were still risking their lives.
Yes. Motivations often are mixed.
Yes.
There's a whole continuum, I think, you know.
That was one thing I wanted to mention. The other thing was Marika mentioned how good we were, how we behaved. And that's an interesting thing. Children don't usually behave, you know. So what was it that made us so aware? I mean, I was 5 years old when I was sat down and said, your name is no longer Evi Weiss, which was a Jewish name at the time.
Yeah.
It's Julish Kotor. You have to remember, your birthday is no longer January 6th, but I think it was May 12th. And if you don't remember this, and if you make a mistake, we will all be killed. Now, imagine saying that to a 5-year-old.
To carry.
Exactly. And we did it, at least those of us who survived it. You know, how many did not? So to put this immense burden on a child,
Yes.
and we carried it. That's what made us good. You know.
Amazing. I want to do a couple things in the last few minutes we have. I want to move for a second because of the book that was put together, Remember Us, the importance of telling these stories. I would like to first let the viewers hear an example of how this message is being carried on by the next generation, and then I want to come back a little bit to the four of you about the book itself. So if I could ask briefly for Amanda to say, can you just describe a little of the experience of what happened in your senior year of college around this?
All right, well, in the past we've always done a Holocaust Remembrance Day, and what I felt afterwards, after last year, was that I really wanted to expand it, and I thought that there was so much more that we could be doing with, you know, with there are just so many different aspects to this, you know, to everything that happened. So we expanded it to a week, and we had 1 or 2 different things going on each day, and we had a German refugee come and speak to us. We had another hidden child come and speak to us. We had we read the names. We had people reading the names all day for one of the days and handing out stickers that said "Remember." And then we had another day where we had we were handing out ribbons with different colors, and each color represented a different group of people who had been persecuted during the Holocaust. So that includes handicapped, homosexuals, gypsies, political dissidents, you know, Jewish people, and then we also had handouts on the Holocaust in general. And then we showed defiance one day, and we had, we were also trying to expand it a little bit to talk about the genocides that are currently going on. And so on the night we actually had our the hidden child come to speak, we also had luminaries set up in the big courtyard area in the main center of campus. And so each candle represented 100,000 people who have been killed by genocide over the past 100 years. So we had the whole lawn kind of set up.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Very powerful message for the viewers and for our friends here to say that, no, we will not forget. Can you say a little bit about how this book came together too, just so the audience can, and again, it's Remember Us.
We had formed, in 1991 was the first conference of the Hidden Child. Before that there was no such, people didn't know about hidden children. It was, we were refugees, we never considered ourselves survivors.
Right.
We were thrown around the world, and
yes.
I personally went from Hungary to France to England to Austria to South America before I came.
You traveled a lot.
But I was a refugee everywhere.
Yes.
It never occurred to me that I was a survivor. And then finally we had this conference, and that bestowed this title on us, which in a sense gave us an identity. And at that conference, various nationalities got together, including the Hungarians, and we formed a group called the Hungarian Hidden Children, of whom Marika and Susan are founding members, including me.
Uh-huh.
And we meet, still do, once a month.
That's wonderful.
To meet. And after a while we decided, we really ought to leave something behind to show why we're together and what we're doing for our children, for our grandchildren, and other generations. So after many years of trying, we finally decided on this book and the format. And that's what it is. The title comes from the opening poem, which one of our members wrote. Before that, we didn't have a title. And slowly it got together, and we decided we'd all give one or two little stories. As I said, not the horror stories, but our stories, our children. Mm-hmm. And we also put in our biographies,
yes,
so that our children could see who their great-grandparents were, their grandparents, what happened to
connection,
them.
Yes.
And something about our lives before, during, after the war. And pictures.
Absolutely wonderful, wonderful book. And pictures of you now and pictures of you then. Could you comment a little bit about how, and this is a big topic, but could you comment a little bit about how, as you went on with your lives, this experience really has affected relationships, has affected major factors in your life, your spiritual beliefs, anything you want to comment on, just for the audience to get a little bit of a feeling of what you've done in many ways to try to integrate this and be able to go on, which I think is itself defying Hitler.
Well, I think one of the things that both my brother and I did, the two German soldiers who saved us,
yes,
died in the retreat when we were liberated. And since we didn't know their families, we could not even thank them.
Yeah.
And because we didn't know their serial number or their full names, we would not honor them in Yad Vashem.
Yes.
Where there's a section in the memorial for righteous people who saved you. So what we did, and it wasn't deliberate, we integrated them into our lives. Their courage,
yes,
their commitment to helping others, their willingness to take risks. My brother became a psychologist, I became a social worker.
Uh-huh.
Because we've learned what a privilege it is to make what one person can do in the life of what a difference one person can make,
yes,
in the life of another.
That's very inspirational. What would any of you like to add about how it affected your lives too, as you look forward, lessons and impact?
I think we are missing one thing here, and at last, I can say it impacted me,
yes,
very much, the importance of family. Good or bad, whether you like your family or children or brothers, sisters, I think we are very family-oriented. Mm-hmm. We may not be the best parents or the best sisters or brothers or whatever, but we take family obligation quite seriously. And I think that is because we learned, especially in the time of trouble, the family which holds together not only will survive somewhat easier, but also gives certain security to the children. And the children need that security because the children doesn't know anything about money. They don't know really that much what's going on.
Yes.
But as long as mommy and daddy is there and it tells them everything will be all right, don't worry about it, I will take care of, they say okay, they will take care of.
And that's so important, that safety important. And security.
That's safety, and I think that's probably one of the most important parts.
I remember, Tommy, one of the stories in the book about, I forget who it was, that was saying that whenever their mother put on makeup, It made them.
I was.
Was it your mom?
Yes.
I love that too. It would make people. It would make you guys feel like, well, I guess she's expecting to go on with life. It's okay. She's taking care of her face and stuff. Yeah. Thank you for that, Tommy. Yes, Marika.
It's also not contradicting, just adding to
Yes.
it, is that a great interest and to minorities and their problems, you know, and a great understanding, and always an outrage when there is an injustice happens to any minority, and I think that's very much ingrained in us, in all of us. You know, may not be as active as you know, one is more active than the other depending on their personality.
Yes.
And circumstances, but still, I think at least I have a great passion for anybody who suffers from any kind of injustice.
Yes. Go ahead,
May I
Tommy.
add to something?
Please.
I think we have a duty. And our duty is, besides remembrance and all the Holocaust, to remember that there are other minorities, there is other genocide,
Good for you, Tommy.
there
Good
is
point.
all kind of other problems on the world, and we should speak up or do whatever we can.
That's what was part of your ceremony too, Amanda, right? In terms of honoring other genocides as well.
Absolutely. I mean, part of one of the things we were doing is when we had all the luminaries up, is, you know, we had things that you could sign. We got involved with, we had other organizations involved, and it's one called STAND, which is students, I don't know, something about Darfur. I don't remember the exact, what it stands for, but they were out there, you know, they had a table, they were explaining as people walked by what they were doing, and they also, I think, were signing some sort of a petition to try and end what's going on there.
One of the things I wanted to say too was that I find so inspiring about all of you is that when people think of the Holocaust, they think of, understandably, how people were victimized, how cruel the victimization was. But when I hear your stories, and also reading a paper that Susan shared with me, I think she makes a really important point that we need to also look at what the strengths are of people, what their qualities are that help them survive, and as Tommy pointed out, the importance of the people, as you all did, the importance of the people around you, your families, the strength of those people too. So even in this frightening, difficult story, rather than looking at it as we are victims alone, it's that also I think you guys have really brought out the strengths in yourselves and the people around you, and you know, different circumstances that you used, even your mom's, you know, here's another plan with the insulin, I'm going to try to figure a way to survive. I admire that, and I think it's an important model for everybody. I don't know if anyone wants to add to that in our closing, but that was something that really struck me.
I think that's the fact that do not see yourself as a victim.
Yes.
That's number one.
Yes.
You know, and that's what helped those of us who survived well to fight back and realize that we have a life, we will go on, and we will overcome.
On that note, I know we need to stop, and I want to thank our guests so much, all of you, for coming. It's been wonderful. And I close by remembering meeting Marika's little grandchild and holding it up and saying, this is our revenge as well as our hope. So thank you, everybody, for watching, and please watch us again on the sunny side of the street. Take care, everybody.
Happy too is your step. Life can be so sweet on the sunny, sunny, sunny side of the street.